Why someone could actually be Batman in real life. What have comic books and movies told us about Batman's physical abilities? There's a quote from Neil Adams, the great Batman illustrator, who said Batman would win, place or show in every event in the Olympics. Probably if I were Batman's handler, I'd put him in the decathlon. Although Batman is shown in the comics as being the fastest and strongest and all these other things, in reality, you can actually be all of that at once. To be Batman properly, what you really need to do is be exceptionally good at many different things. It's when you take all the pieces and put them together that you get the Batman. What's the most plausible about portrayals of Batman's skills? You could train somebody to be a tremendous athlete and to have a significant martial arts background, and also to use some of the gear that he has, which requires a lot of physical prowess. Most of what you see there is feasible to the extent that somebody could be trained to the extreme. We're seeing that kind of thing in less than a month in the Olympics. What's less realistic? A great example is in the movies, where Batman is fighting multiple opponents, and all of a sudden, he's taking on 10 people. If you just estimate how fast somebody could punch and kick, and how many times you could hit one person in a second, you wind up with numbers like 5 or 6. This doesn't mean you could fight 4 or 5 people, but it's also hard for 4 or 5 people to simultaneously attack somebody, because they get in each other's way. More realistic is a couple of attackers. How long would Bruce Wayne have to train to become Batman? In some of the timelines you see in the comics, the backstory is he goes away for 5 years. For some it's 3 to 5 years, or 8 years, or 12 years. In terms of physical changes, with strength and conditioning, that's happening fairly quickly. We're taking 3 to 5 years. In terms of the physical skills, to be able to defend himself against all of these opponents all the time, I would benchmark that at 10 to 12 years. Probably the most reality-based representation of Batman and his training was in Batman Begins. Why such a long training time? Batman can't really afford to lose. Losing means death, or at least not being able to be Batman anymore. But another benchmark is having enough skill and experience to defend himself without killing anyone, because that's part of his credo. It would be much easier to fight somebody if you could incapacitate them with extreme force. Punching somebody in the throat could be a lethal blow. That's pretty easy to do. But if you're thinking about something that doesn't result in lethal force, that's more tricky. It's really hard for people to get their heads around, I think. To be that good, to not actually lethally injure anyone, requires an extremely high level of skill that would take maybe 15 to 18 years to accumulate. Where does the number 15 to 18 years come from? That comes from my own training in martial arts, and seeing how long it takes people to respond to simple situations, let alone the complexities of smoke bombs going off and people having big bat suits on. No matter how much training you have, when we're subjected to a lot of psychological stress, we make a bunch more mistakes. The police talk about this when they use things called reality-based training. It takes years and years and years and years to have the poise to be able to perform when somebody is attacking you for real. What's a realistic training regimen? I didn't give a training manual in my book, but he'd want to do specialized weight training to build up an ability to work at a really high rate for maybe 30 seconds to a minute, the maximum time period associated with his fights. One of the early comics shows him holding an enormous weight over his head. That's not the right kind of adaptation towards punching and kicking. He's got to make sure he's doing all the skill training at the same time, so that he's actually using the physical adaptations he's slowly gaining. In conventional martial arts, when people take weapons training, you're doing a kind of power strength training. What about his reaction speed? There is evidence that experts in something like football or hockey have an improved ability to perceive movement in time. In the book, I use the example of Steve Nash throwing the ball. Even though he can't see where the receiver of the pass is going to be, experts are able to extract more information faster than others. It's almost like their nervous systems become more efficient. How would Batman get enough rest? The difficulty for Batman is he's going to be trying to sleep during the day. He's going to be really tired actually, unless he can shift himself over to just being up at night. If he was just a nocturnal guy, he would actually be a lot healthier and have a lot better sleep than if he were doing what he does now, which is getting some light here and there. That's going to mess up his sleep patterns and duration of sleep. How many of us do you think could become a Batman? If you found the percentage of billionaires and multiply that by the percentage of people who become Olympic decathletes, you could probably get a close estimate. That's really important. The real important thing is just how much a human being really can do. There's such a huge range of performance and ability you can tap into. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.